Charmander's story isn't heroic, it's survival. How did a small fire lizard designed around vulnerability become one of the faces of the franchise? Why did Charmeleon's personality shift so aggressively after evolution? And how did Charizard go from an anime fan favorite to a Pokemon that repeatedly dominated competitive formats, received multiple Mega Evolutions, and became one of the most pushed cards and expensive cards in TCG history? This episode continues our Pokédex Deep Dive series where we analyze every Pokemon in order and separate nostalgia from design intent. Charmander is one of the most emotionally loaded Pokemon designs in the entire franchise, largely because its core concept revolves around survival. Unlike Bulbasaur's symbiosis or Squirtle's defensive shell, Charmander's defining feature is the flame on its tail. According to Pokédex entries, that flame directly represents his life force. If it ever goes out, Charmander dies. That single mechanic instantly makes Charmander more fragile, more vulnerable, and more narratively intense than most early Pokemon. Design-wise, Charmander draws inspiration from salamanders, creatures historically associated with fire in European folklore. In myth, salamanders were believed to be born from flame and capable of living with them, a concept Pokemon cleverly twists by making fire both Charmander's strength and its greatest weakness. The flame sustains life, but it also creates a constant dependency on warmth and care. Rain, cold, and neglect are not just inconveniences, they are existential threats. This gives Charmander a built-in narrative of endurance and tension that few starter Pokemons can match. That theme is pushed heavily in the anime. Charmander's introduction remains one of the darkest moments in early Pokemon storytelling. Abandoned by its original trainer and left exposed to the rain, Charmander survives only by stubbornly protecting its fading flame. When Ash finally takes it in, Charmander isn't cheerful or confident, it's cautious, hesitant, and clearly affected by the abandonment. This portrayal permanently shapes the audience perception, turning Charmander into a symbol of loyalty earned through suffering rather than raw strength or talent. And from a gameplay perspective, early game Charmander was objectively the most difficult Kanto starter to use. Its weakness to Brock's rock types and Misty's water types forced players to rely on strategy, grinding, and unconventional solutions. That difficulty unintentionally bonded players to Charmander, creating the feeling that choosing it meant selecting Pokemon's unofficial hard mode. Competitively, Charmander itself never mattered, but its identity did. Low bulk, decent speed, and access to powerful fire-type attacks established a high-risk, high-reward playstyle that would define the entire evolutionary line. Charmander teaches an early lesson Pokemon rarely repeats. Power without protection demands patience, planning, and precision. Charmeleon represents one of the most dramatic personality shifts caused by evolution anywhere in Pokemon. Where Charmander is cautious and survival focused, Charmeleon emerges aggressive, impatient, and openly defiant. This change isn't just an anime exaggeration either. Pokédex entries consistently describe Charmeleon as hot-headed, prideful, and brutal in battle, actively seeking strong opponents while showing little concern for commands or restraint. In this evolutionary line, growth doesn't just increase power, it fundamentally alters temperament. Visually, Charmeleon leads harder into his reptilian roots. Its body becomes leaner and more angular, its claws sharpen, and its stance straightens into something far more predatory. The flame on its tail burns brighter and more violently, reinforcing the idea that the internal fire is becoming harder to control. The anime pushes this theme to the extreme. After evolving, Ash's Charmeleon begins disobeying him almost immediately. It ignores commands, attacks only when it feels like it, and outright refuses to battle opponents it considers weak. This isn't portrayed as cruelty though, but as arrogance born from sudden power. Charmeleon believes it has outgrown its trainer, creating tension that costs Ash multiple battles and nearly derails his entire journey. The message is clear: power gained too quickly can fracture trust. That narrative mirrors gameplay surprisingly well. In early generations, Charmeleon sits in an awkward middle ground. Its offensive stats jump noticeably, but its defense remains shaky, and its move pool is still limited. Competitively though, Charmeleon has rarely mattered in official formats, but it has carved out a niche relevance. With Eviolite, much like Ivysaur, it can become deceptively bulky, combining decent speed with a solid offensive pressure. Still, it exists largely in Charizard's shadow, and that's intentional. Charmeleon's role isn't dominance, it's transformation. Charizard is where the Charmander line stops just being an evolutionary family and starts becoming a franchise pillar. From its first appearance, Charizard was designed to feel special. Its wings, horns, and towering posture taps directly into the classic dragon mythology. Even without the dragon typing, Visually and thematically, Charizard represents freedom, dominance, and a spectacle, and Pokemon has reinforced that identity at nearly every opportunity. The anime played a massive role in this. Charizard's disobedience arc wasn't just character drama, it was a narrative investment. After evolving, Charizard refuses weaker opponents, ignores commands, and treats Ash as if he was unworthy. This tension peaks before eventually resolving during the Orange Island and Johto arcs, where Charizard finally accepts Ash as a competent trainer. That payoff turned Charizard from a rebellious powerhouse into a disciplined weapon, making his victories feel earned rather than handed out. Few Pokemon received that level of long-term character development. And competitively, Charizard's early history is messy. In generations 1 through 3, its fire flying type left it vulnerable to rock, electric, and water attacks. As competitive play matured, Stealth Rock became Charizard's single greatest enemy, stripping away half its health on entry. On paper, this should have killed its viability. In practice, Charizard survived because players were willing to build entire teams around supporting it. That willingness says everything about its appeal. And everything changed in Generation 6. Mega Evolution didn't just help Charizard, it redefined it. Mega Charizard X finally fulfilled fans' expectation by granting it a dragon typing and turning Charizard into a devastating physical attacker. With Tough Claws boosting its contact moves, access to Dragon Dance, and dramatically improved its bulk, Charizard X became a legitimate win condition. It no longer relied on weather or gimmicks, it simply overpowered teams through setup and pressure. Mega Charizard Y, on the other hand, leaned fully into the spectacle. With Drought automatically summoning harsh sunlight, it turned Charizard into one of the most destructive special attackers in competitive history. Sun-boosted Fire Blast and Heat Waves erased defensive cores, while Solar Beam eliminated traditional counters. Mega Charizard Y warped team building around weather control and cemented Charizard as a meta-defining threat rather than a novelty pick. Generation 8 escalated things further with Gigantamax Charizard. G-Max Wildfire introduced unavoidable residual damage that punished switching and defensive play, forcing opponents into aggressive, often losing positions. In VGC formats, Charizard became a tournament staple, frequently paired with redirection, speed control, and weather support. It wasn't just viable, it was oppressive when played correctly. Now in the Pokemon TCG, Charizard's competitive legacy is even more extreme. Base set Charizard became a cultural icon, while later versions like Charizard EX, VMAX, and X cards repeatedly defined entire formats through overwhelming damage output. Charizard cards are almost always designed to feel powerful, risky, and game-ending, reinforcing its identity as Pokemon's ultimate glass cannon. Charizard's competitive history proves one thing clearly: Pokemon doesn't just allow Charizard to be relevant, it actively ensures it. Whether that's smart branding or blatant favoritism depends on the perspective. But no Pokemon better demonstrates how mechanics, marketing, and mythology can merge into a single unstoppable icon. The Charmander evolutionary line tells one of the most deliberate stories in all of Pokemon. It begins with vulnerability and survival, evolves through arrogance and instability, and ends with overwhelming power that has to be earned, controlled, and maintained. Charmander teaches endurance, Charmeleon represents unchecked growth, and Charizard completes the arc as a Pokemon that can either dominate or self-destruct depending on how it's handled. If you guys enjoyed this deep dive, make sure to like the video and subscribe and share, because next time we move on to Pokemon number 7, Squirtle, and continue breaking down every Pokemon in order through the entire Pokédex. Catch you guys next time.